pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Item 1.03, adoption of the agenda. It is recommended that the agenda for the April 24, 2019 regular meeting of the Board of School Trustees be adopted as presented.
So moved. Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item 2.01, Liberty Elementary School presentations. Mrs. Mabry?
Good evening. School, home of the Rockets. I'd like to start this evening with just a little mention of some of the work that we've done with our school improvement plan. That was a big piece of our work this year, and I wanted to just mention our 3 goals that we have set for us to work on. So we have a math goal, which is really focused on computation. We have a writing goal, which is our goal that we are still really working on developing. And then we have a behavior goal, because we know that behavior ties right back into student learning. And so you're going to hear a little bit about some of the interventions, especially for our behavior goal tonight. I would like to thank some people before we get started with our program for the setup tonight. You know, we knew this was a very special board meeting, so we really wanted our house to look good. So our team here, Tim Sparrow, Janie Ewald, Vicki Sloan, Bruce Hojanacki for setting up, Ann Nichols, our secretary, who is so valuable, Peggy for the refreshments tonight. I just want to thank everybody who had a hand in getting this put together. It truly was a team effort, so thank you. I also want to recognize our Liberty team. If you guys would please stand and be recognized. I want to thank you. Those of you who are able to be here tonight, thank you for your dedication and commitment. So this week is Autism Awareness. We're lighting it up blue today, so you see a lot of blue for autism awareness. But back to our school improvement plan real quick. There's one more person I want to thank, and that is Corey Laban. Corey was such a valuable resource for us as we worked on our school improvement plan this year, and I wanted to give him some props, because thank you for that. We really appreciate your help with us. Thank you. All right, so we have 3 short presentations tonight. We're going to start with kind of a sample of what some of our classroom, the great things our classroom teachers are doing. So Mrs. Landis' second graders are here tonight to share with you some of the projects that they've been working on. We also have, and you guys can start making your way up here, we also have Mrs. Hattery, who is our social worker, and Miss Fisher, our 3rd grade teacher, who are going to share with you an intervention that we're using as part of that behavior goal, and it's called Zones of Regulation, and they're going to show and share with you some of the great data that we're seeing. Certainly not least, Liberty is really pushing and moving toward what is called the seven habits, and just Leader in Me. It's based on Stephen Covey's work, and so our student leaders are here tonight, and we're really excited. They're going to share with you the 7 habits. So I'm going to get out of the way and let these guys do it, because this is where all the good stuff happens in the classroom. So Mrs. Landis and her second graders.
Okay, so we have been doing some project-based learning in the classroom with our second graders. We're doing animal projects. And so by integrating curriculum, we can do these project-based learning, and we are covering many standards. Some of the standards we're covering are language arts standards, such as studying author's craft, using text features to locate key facts, comparing and contrasting important points of two texts, identifying author's purpose, writing paragraphs, using great verbs and adjectives. We also are incorporating social studies and science curriculum with map skills and determining offspring, classifying living organisms by their physical features, and describing how they survive. And we're also incorporating technology standards, such as communicating your thoughts and ideas and stories step by step, and understanding and arranging information in useful order. So the kids are super excited about their projects, so they wanted to share just a piece. Each of them are going to share a piece of what they're doing in our classroom.
We started our project by drawing, coloring, and painting our animals. We wrote using different ways to poetry, fiction stories, and nonfiction slides.
I'm going to read my fiction story. The chipmunk is the main character. One dark, dark night, when 15 suburban chipmunks were all having a dance party. All the chipmunks were dancing on the dirt floor, and the fire was so bright that they didn't even need a torch. All the chipmunks stayed up very, very late, so late that some fell asleep right on the dance floor. Soon the party was over and the bright fire was out. They were so tired they slept right through breakfast. When they woke up, they were as hungry as a bear. They all had nuts for lunch. After lunch, a chipmunk named Ava said, "Shh, I think I hear something coming." Everybody stopped what they were doing and they were silent. 5 seconds later, they saw a tiger. Everybody screamed, "Ah!" The tiger looked really, really sad. The tiger said, "Can I be your friend?" Everybody froze. "Do you have any friends?" Chipmunks asked. "No," he replied sadly. All the chipmunks felt badly and said, "We will be your friends." That night they had another party, but this time with the tiger.
I wrote an acrostic poem about a cardinal. Cardinal, come in peace, our bright red, our worm eaters, dark circle around its beak, Indiana state bird. On a tree they make their nest, they make loud whistle chirps. We also made trading cards. We drew our animal on the front and information on the back. I'll read my information to you. Habitat, Africa, South America. Diet, shrimp, fish, snail, and algae. Habitation, they stay in groups to watch for predators. They have web feet to stop them from sinking in the mud.
I used the facts I learned to create a slideshow. I learned about bat adaptations, body parts, habitats, the food chain, and bat foods. Did you know that bats are like bees because they pollinate? Also, their wings are made of skin and bone. Some bats drink blood. I also learned about different types of bats. Did you know that there are more than 10,000 types of bats? My favorite type of bat is the flying fox because it is the biggest bat. Bats have lots and lots of predators that want to eat them. Some of the predators are hawks, owls, and snakes. I really enjoyed learning about bats.
We use shapes to design and create our animals, and this is what they turned out to be.
Okay, so the kids each share just a part of their entire project. Each child is creating each of these things for their particular animal that they chose. So the benefits of project-based learning are not only that the students are completely engaged, experts in their animal, which is a real confidence booster. They have used lots of higher order thinking skills, such as creating and organizing and problem solving and planning and choosing, and I could go on and on. There's a whole list up there of 21st century skills as well as higher order thinking skills. And it's also just lots of fun. So they're going to dress up as their animal after they've finished learning about it, and they're going to be presenting to the class their projects, and then to the school, and then to the community. So on May 30th, if y'all want to come out and see that. Thanks.
Good evening, everyone. We're here to talk today about zones of regulation, and we have some guests with us today as well that is going to do a little bit of explaining. Okay, first of all, let me explain that the program was designed by Leah Kuipers. She was an autism research specialist, and in her findings, she found that there were certain ways that children could regulate their emotions, and that is what actually the program is all about. Okay, so today, come on up here. We have Leighton and Lainey Shook. They are both part of one of the classes that I taught zones of regulation in this year, and they're going to help describe exactly what each zone means. Okay, so Lainey, she has the green zone, so she's going to tell us how we feel when we are in the green zone.
You're relaxed, you're good, you're calm, you're okay, you're ready to learn, you're proud, focused, thankful, happy, and a good listener.
Very good, thank you. Okay, Leighton is going to tell us how he feels when he's in the blue zone.
Hurt, sick, sad, sigh, depressed, bored, feeling sorry.
Okay, and he's also going to tell us what he feels like when he's in the yellow zone.
Confused, jealous, silly, frustrated, scared.
Very good. And last but not least, Lainey is going to tell us how she feels when she's in the red zone.
You're terrified, you're yelling, you're angry, mad, you're anxious, you're mean, you're out of control.
Yes. And what zone is it that we always want to try to get back to?
In the green zone.
The green zone. Okay.
That does not sound great, sorry. All right, so why did we choose to do zones at Liberty? Well, last year, Mishawaka, School City Mishawaka held the Whole Child Workshop. I believe it was the first time ever, and it was an amazing experience. And just by coincidence, the principal and I both attended this same workshop on the zones of regulation, because we're like, all right, this sounds intriguing. Let's learn a little bit more. And we heard from someone who had implemented it in their own school that this is a great program because it helps students address their emotional outbursts. It helps them learn the emotions that they're feeling and gives a school and a classroom a common language to speak. So that way everyone can be on the same page with what are you feeling and how can I help you get back to the green zone. So, back that way. Sweet. All right, so implementation.
Okay, so I met with 3 classes, 1 second grade and 2 third grade classes for about 4 months, approximately 4 months, twice a week for 30 minutes. And in those, the days that I spoke with the children, we did a lot of different activities, interactive activities, talking about what it means to be in each zone and how to get out of each one of those zones back to the green zone. What they also learned was a lot about empathy, because not only are they feeling a certain way, but because of the way they feel, other kids feel a certain way as well. Okay, so when we're angry, we know other people might be scared, might be frustrated, and they learned that too. So they learned a lot about their own emotions, plus they learned about how those emotions affect other people. So one of the things, some of the lessons up there on the board were like, we learned about our inner coach versus our inner critic. Maybe like our coach is like telling us the good things to do, or our critic is telling us the wrong things to do. We talked about that. We talked about identifying some of the triggers that we have that make us go to a yellow zone or a red zone. We talked about different types of techniques, that like breathing techniques that can help us get back to the green zone. We also tried to find positive solutions anytime we're in those zones, and we got our little Shay Crawford here, who just went through the program in Mrs. Fisher's class, who's going to tell us about the toolbox that she has, and she has learned whenever she's in a zone, she's got a tool to get out of it and back in the green. So we're going to talk a little bit about that with Shay right now. So Shay, when you're in the blue zone, and that means when you're sad and you're upset or maybe sick, how do you get back to the green zone?
I usually apologize or use the breathing 8.
You breathing 8. Okay, so it's like an 8, breathing 8. So she breathes in, she breathes out. She breathes in, she breathes out. So good. Okay, so tell me some things, some tools that you learned to get back to the green zone when you're in the yellow zone.
Tell a teacher, push a wall, work together.
Okay, very good. So pushing a wall helps you get out that energy, right, that you might use in a different way that's not so positive. Okay, very good. How about, what's in your toolbox for you when you're in the red zone?
I usually close my eyes and imagine my happy place.
Your happy place, good. And we also talked about how to stay in your green zone. So how do you stay in your green zone?
I just close my eyes and relax in my chair.
Okay, very good. And they also, what is nice about Mrs. Fisher's class is they have a zone area where they go and they sit and they reflect, and that's when they choose to do different things to calm down. So it's a really nice little spot. Okay, so up on our next slide is the data that we collected, okay, over these months. And I know it's hard to see, but can you see? I can't see that, but the zone, it's a zone program implemented. So in October, if you look at Class A, October, November, December, and January was the time frame I did Class A, okay? And this data comes from conduct reports. And conduct reports are anything the teacher writes as an office referral. And that means that children are either being physically aggressive, they may be maybe in danger of harming self or others, so they need to be removed from the classroom, okay? So those are the numbers across the whole entire year, and again, I know it's hard to see. Class B and C went through their program January, February, March, and April. They went through at the same time. Okay, so take a look at those numbers, and then April is going to break it down even more for you.
Yeah. All right, so big table of numbers, not very helpful sometimes. So we broke it up into before, during, and after zones implementation. So looking from before to after, Class A, 4 to 3, a monthly average of 4 office referrals to 3. Class B, 2 to 0. Class C, 7.5. We haven't had enough data because at the time that we made this, the class had just recently finished, so that number would be 0. Now, the only number of interest that stands out kind of as like a not so hot point is during zones, Class A's average went from 4 to 5.5. So our intervention caused referrals to go up? Not really, because on our next slide, we even had to take a look at that data. So when we look at Class A's data just for the months of zones implementation, we see that the first month of implementation, they had 13 office referrals in 1 month. By the end, they had 1. That is a serious reduction. Like I'll admit, I Googled how to calculate a percentage reduction because that's not something I'm very up to date on. 92% decrease in the number of office referrals. Think about the impact that has on a classroom. How much instructional time is saved by not having those behaviors in a classroom. It's amazing. And if you don't believe the numbers, then you can ask me. My classroom alone, I knew from the beginning of the year I needed something to help me because my last year students, it was a different group. This year, from the first day of school, it was a different ball game. I had to focus almost exclusively on behavior because the interruptions to my instruction were so severe. Having my students go through zones, even my especially difficult cases that we all know that there are some kids that just don't operate in the same way in their brains. Just yesterday, first day of iLearn testing, I have a student who in the beginning of the year, he would get frustrated, he would kick a chair across the room. He would yell. He would have to be removed from my classroom. Yesterday, we're taking the iLearn test. He's getting frustrated, I can see it. He raises his hand and asks for a piece of paper. So I give him a piece of paper. It's iLearn, he might need to get some scratch work done. He draws the lazy 8 breathing aid, and he starts tracing it with his finger. And then he gets back to work. Now, I'm getting chills just thinking of it because for this child, it was such an amazing moment for me because that's all I can say. Just going from a student who was out of control to a student who can control himself and ask for help when he needs it is such an amazing feeling for me as a teacher.
Okay, so we are going to wrap this up by asking these folks. Layton, has Zones helped you?
Yes.
Lainey, has Zones helped you?
Yes.
And Shay, since you're in Mrs. Fisher's class, can you vouch for her? Has Zones helped you in your class?
Yes.
How so?
If we didn't have Miss Hadley, we would have a huge class with arguing, fighting. It would just be a whole class being mean to each other.
Thank you very much.
Good evening. Part of the Mishawaka way is believing in the growth mindset. And here at Liberty Elementary, we have chosen to take that one step further. So in order to have a growth mindset is embracing the belief that we can all lead lives of greatness. And using Covey's work and the 7 habits, it's building a community of students who go on to be adults who embrace the idea of being leaders and who are productive parts of our community. So I'm going to hand this over to part of our student leadership, and they're going to talk to you about the 7 habits and how they use them in their lives.
You may be wondering what the Leader in Me program is. Leader in Me, LIM, is a whole school transformation model developed in partnership with educators. This program empowers students like me with leadership skills I need for life. It uses research-based practices to change a school's climate and improve its behavior. It helps prepare us for college, career, and life. Learning the 7 habits can improve our lives both in and out of school. Finally, the program believes anyone and everyone can be a leader. Whether it's your family, friends, neighbors, or colleagues, you should always be working with and encouraging others. The Leader in Me calls us to use the 7 habits to lead ourselves and others to greatness.
Do you say this thing? Say this thing on the paper? Habit 1 is being proactive. This means I have a can-do attitude. I am in control of how I act. I am in control of how I act and feel. I do not blame others. I do the right thing without being asked, even when nobody's looking.
Habit 2 is begin with the end in mind. This means I think ahead and stay focused. I do things that have meaning and make a difference. I am an important part of my classroom. I look for ways to be a good citizen.
Putting first things first is the third habit. Putting first things first is important. And when I get home, I do my homework, then I get to play outside. When I get to school, I do my work, and then I get to play. Habit 4, think win-win. This means I want everybody to be successful. I don't have to put others down to get what I want. It makes me happy to see other people happy. I like to do nice things for others.
Habit 5 is to seek first to understand and then to be understood. I listen to others' ideas and feelings. I try to see things from their viewpoints. I listen without interrupting, but I'm confident in voicing my ideas.
Hi, I'm Emmy, and I'm in 5th grade. I'm representing Habit 6, Synergize. That means working well with one another, listening to other people, letting other people talk, and that you know working as a team is better than alone. This habit is useful when you work with other people. It is easy to forget that working in a group is better than alone. In a group, you could share ideas as well as listening to other people's ideas. You could hear ideas that could be better than yours, or they could add on to your ideas to make them better. This habit isn't just so that you could share your ideas, it's so that you could listen too. I use Habit 6 every day, whether I'm at home, at school, or at soccer practice. Having that second opinion always helps me reassure that my idea is right on track. Thank you for listening.
Habit 7 is sharpen the saw. This means I take care of my body by exercising, eating right, and getting enough sleep. And I also spend time with family and friends.
Thank you for listening.
Really reflects our commitment in each one of these to equipping our children with the skills that they need to become successful adults and approaching issues with new perspectives. I found the skills, the zones of regulation particularly intriguing, and that sounds like something that would be good to replicate widely. Thank you. Thank you for the work you're doing here, and thank you, students. This part concludes the presentation parts of the meeting, and typically here, and we'll do it tonight, this is an opportunity if you came with your children and you're here to hear what we just heard, but aren't interested in the business meeting, we'll pause for a moment to allow people to leave in an orderly fashion. But we do have some very important things coming up on the agenda, not the least of which is our vote on hiring a new superintendent. So if you'd like to stay for that, that comes early in the business meeting, and I think it'd be well worth staying for. But I'll take a moment for those who need to leave now. All right, we'll move on to the comments and questions from the floor section of the agenda. Item 3.01, representatives of the PTA. Is there anyone from the PTA? Yes.
Thank you, school board members, and good evening, everyone. My name is Linnell Rosa, and I'm the PTA president here at Liberty, as well as the Mishawaka PTA Council. I'd like to take this time to tell you a little bit about our PTA here at Liberty. I've been the president here for the past 3 years, and every year our main goal is to provide more activities for the families here at Liberty as well as the staff. I want to quickly run through our events from this year. We had a Rise and Roll sale, we had a Thistleberry Farm night for our families, Trunk or Treat, Hacienda Give Back Night, Game Night, Breakfast with Santa, Chuck E. Cheese Give Back Night, World's Finest Chocolate Sale, Culver's Give Back Night, Staff Appreciation Week, and Fun Fair. For anyone that knows me, they know that it's dangerous to say to me, do what you want. I don't know what the meaning of the word moderation means. A great example of this is for our World's Finest Chocolate Sale, we really wanted to get the kids excited about selling the candy this year. We decided to show the students the prizes they would be working towards on the day we announced the sale. We also added a 32-inch smart TV to our prize wheel. Every child who sold at least one box of candy would get a chance at the prize wheel. However many boxes of candy you sold, that is how many times you got to pick an envelope from the prize wheel. The children were extremely excited about the thought of winning a TV. They were literally screaming when we showed them the TV. It was hilarious. We had more kids signing up to sell chocolate than we had had in the past 2 years. We wanted to show our gratitude to the students, and since I go above and beyond as much as possible, we added another 32-inch smart TV to the prize wheel. Sales started picking up within the first week, even more, so I added a third TV to the prize wheel. We helped getting the word out by making commercials on our Facebook page, which was viewed and shared by a lot of our staff and our parents. Our main goal was to show the children that we appreciated their hard work and that the money was going back to them. This candy sale was one of the best sales that we have ever had. As for our staff, we really can't do enough to show how much we appreciate them. The best way for us to show our appreciation is during Teachers Week. Again, we don't know the meaning of the word moderation. Every day during Teachers Week, we decorate the Teachers Lounge, and every day is a different theme. This year, our themes are Western, Space, Princess, and Mad Scientist. But you have to watch out when you go in there because there's usually a mannequin in there and it'll scare 1 or 2 teachers, usually every day. I'm proud to say that we have never had to cater in any of these days because we have the amazing Amber Usinoff who makes all the food and desserts from scratch every day, and it goes with whatever theme that we have. I make and put all the decorations together. We enjoy watching the teachers eat and take in the scenery. All these events would never be possible without the PTA. I cannot stress enough the importance of the PTA in all schools. So many families benefit from the activities that are put together by the PTA. Every school needs an active PTA, not only for the families, but for the staff as well. Thank you.
And thank you for all the PTA does. Sounds like you're very busy. Item 3.02, representatives of school employees. We have anything tonight? All right. Item 3.03, representatives of the Mishawaka Education Foundation. Yes, Mr. Dooley.
My name is Brian Dooley, and I'm one of the board members with the Mishawaka Education Foundation. And first, I'd like to thank the board for this opportunity for me to share some updates from what we're doing. We have 2 upcoming events that we'd like to share with everybody. The first, the 12th annual Made in Mishawaka Luncheon is on Wednesday, June 12th at the Holiday Inn Mishawaka Conference Center. We'll be featuring this year's grant recipients, student artists, and celebrating the contributions of Al Smith, Rosemary Spalding, and the late Dr. David Spalding. They are our Made in Mishawaka honorees this year. And Dr. Spiker and the new superintendent will also share a few words at the event. The second event is the second annual MHS All-Class Reunion at the FOP on July 13th at 7 p.m. The inaugural event went very well last year, and we're expecting an even bigger event this year. So we hope you'll join us at these 2 events, and we look forward to seeing you there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Item 3.04 is general public, and I see that no one has signed up to speak to us this evening, so we will move on to Section 4 of the agenda, the consent agenda. Item 4.01, approval of the minutes of the April 10, 2019 regular meeting of the Board of School Trustees. It is recommended that the minutes of the April 10, 2019 regular meeting of the board be approved as presented. Item 4.02, approval of the financial report. It is recommended that the financial report dated March 2019 be approved as presented. Item 4.03, approval of bill warrants and payroll. It is recommended that the bill warrants and payroll in the amount of $2,575,706.90 be approved for payment from the appropriate funds. Item 4.04, approval of field trip requests. It is recommended that the field trip requests be approved as presented. Item 4.05, approval of fundraiser requests. It is recommended that the Board of School Trustees approve the fundraiser requests as presented. Finally, 4.06, approval of the consent agenda. Is there a recommendation to approve the consent agenda as presented?
Move for approval. Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion? If not, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried. Item 5.01, approval of teacher contract and addendum for employment of superintendent of schools from July 1st, 2019 through June 30th, 2022. For those of you who weren't there this afternoon, we have a press conference to announce the board's invitation to Mr. Wayne Barker, from Superintendent of Bluffton, Harrison Metropolitan School District for the last 10 years, to follow Dr. Spiker when Dr. Spiker ends his term here at the end day of June. This is the end of a very long process. The board, about a year ago, we knew that Dr. Spiker was going to be retiring, that we couldn't keep him forever. I think this is what, your fourth retirement?
I believe.
So we started early because we knew he was going to be a very hard act to follow. We got together, decided on, made a list of the attributes and skills, what we wanted to look for in a superintendent to be able to continue the positive trajectory we've established here. The good things that are happening in here have not happened by accident. They're the result of a lot of planning, vision, teamwork, discipline, and being able to stick to a long-range plan. So we had somebody very specific, a set of skills in mind to hire. Rather than doing an open search, what we did was to work with Dr. Bruce Staley, who many of you remember. He was our chief financial person here for several years and was also a former superintendent himself at Goshen, to take a look around the state, for the people who most effectively, who most closely fit our profile for what we wanted to do, and had actually a proven track record of accomplishing the things that we need to accomplish. And it was a very small pool of existing superintendents. And we interviewed several, each one of whom was extraordinary, but we found one person who had applied who was unique in terms of his his experience and temperament in order to be a good fit for us. And that's Mr. Wayne Barker from Bluffton. The board was unanimous in its consensus that he would be a good choice, and we are here tonight to act on approval of his contract. So that's the background statement. Then I'll make the recommendation. It's recommended that the Board of School Trustees approve the contract for employment of Superintendent of Schools as presented.
Move for approval.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion?
I'd like to say that 3 years ago, when we decided to have Dr. Spiker lead as a superintendent, I think the board felt at that time we were making the right decision, and this was going to set us on a path that was going to push the school forward. I feel just as confident now, after meeting Wayne, that this is exactly what's going to happen now, and that Wayne is going to carry the gauntlet, and we are going to continue our upward movement. And the process, I think, was one that lent itself to us being able to interview the very best and then select out of the very best. And I can't be more fully in approval of Wayne Barker taking the lead here.
I would like to say that I was a little bit nervous going into the situation. The interviews were amazing, every single one of them. It was a tough decision. I think that Mr. Barker stands out. I think his compassion, his personality, his disposition, the way he forms relationships is going to be a great fit for Mishawaka. We are very community-based, we're very family-based. I think that we need somebody who's personable, carry on a conversation, and still be a leader and still demand success from our staff. So I am super eager to see what he brings to the table and to see the relationships that he builds with our corporation and our community. So I'm in full excitement for you to start. So congratulations, and I'm glad that you're here.
You know, I'd like to add to what my other board members have said, but the one thing that stood out when we were interviewing you is that you took in everything and you put all the tools in place, and you're playing off of everyone's strengths, and that shows the sign of a true leader. You looked around the room and you saw that we had a business owner, you have a director of operations, you have a lawyer, you have a business owner, and you have me. And you not only talked about building relationships with community members, but you also talked about Twitter. And it doesn't seem like much, but you're building a community. The kids that we heard from tonight, those are going to be our leaders in 15 years. Those are going to be the people that are sitting right here saying yay and nay to the vision of the school corporation. They're going to be the people that you'll be working with to build this as the greatest city, you know, with the other community leaders. And I was just blown away by all three, but especially you, with everything that you said and everything that you have done. And your track record is amazing, and we are very excited for you to follow Dean, and I think you're going to do phenomenal.
Our school system has faced some adversity in the past and overcame some real issues. Issues that I know that Mr. Barker faced in Bluffton and was able to overcome them. I know running a business or an organization, to be successful, you have to have several things working at the same time. And one of them is having someone at the helm that has faced adversity and been able to overcome the issues and learned and experienced different problems. That's important. I think the other thing is recognizing that the leader typically is orchestrating a band, and the band is comprised of so many people. Everyone in the band has an instrument and brings different strengths. And the band leader doesn't make the band successful, it's the band working together as a team. And that's so true in any organization, including School City of Mishawaka, including Bluffton. And I think we have an individual here that has seen the adversity, has led the band, knows that even though he's driving the bus, that every time he stops and opens the door to the bus is able to pick up good people and hold on to them and put them on the bus. They help him. He'll be successful. I think he's got the experience. I think he's got the background. and we've got so many good people here. It's just absolutely amazing the number of people that have been here for several years, that have really blossomed under the leadership of our team here. And at the same time, as the bus has stopped, Dr. Spiker has been able to pick up some really good people. And I think one of them is Wayne Barker. So thank you. Thank you to both of you.
Anything else? All right, it's been moved and seconded to approve the contract for employment of Wayne Barker as our next superintendent of schools. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Welcome aboard.
Wow, thank you. I appreciate your confidence and your trust in me to come here and follow Dr. Spiker. I'm very grateful and humbled and quite honestly almost speechless right now. Luckily, I got a chance to speak a lot today, I guess, but I do want you to know how much what you said means to me, and more than that even, that you would put your trust in me. Following, as I said earlier today, following Dr. Spiker is a high bar, and that's a challenge, but it also is what brings me here, because I know you're committed to creating a culture of excellence, and I want to be a part of an organization like that. And I'm thankful for what exists here. I've been blown away by the team that is already here. For 6 weeks, I've talked about the people that I've met, and I've been unbelievably impressed by the adults who are on this team. And then today, my wife Vicki and I have just been overwhelmed by people in the community that we've met, and the partnerships that already exist that we look forward to being a part of. And then tonight, my real motivation for what I do, to see children come and present at your board meeting meant a lot to me. And I thank you for that. I thank you for the opportunity. I look forward to being here. And thank you, because tonight you have put my wife and I in the green zone, and we're very happy for that. Thank you.
Green zone tonight. Item 5.02 at the personnel report. Mr. Rigler?
Members of the board, it is recommended that the personnel report dated April 24, 2019 be approved as presented.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the personnel report as presented. Is any discussion on the motion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried. Item 6.01 in the curriculum and instruction portion of the agenda. Approval of 2019 summer athletic camps and fees. Mr. Hopper.
President Curry, Dr. Spiker, school board members, and I guess now Mr. and Mrs. Barker. I would like to talk about summer athletic camps, and we call them the caveman sports camps. So Mishawaka Athletics will be hosting 21 camps from 15 different sports this summer. The earliest camp will be coming for 6th to 8th graders, and that's football, May 20th through the 23rd. Our last camp will be from lacrosse and run June 26th through the 28th. And we'll also be working with the Mishawaka Parks Department and Eberhard Golf Course and Drew Roop with our varsity coaches throughout the summer on the golf course. So 18 of our camps are between $20 and $30, and kids will get a t-shirt, and they'll also get 3 or 4 days of training, and that's a heck of a bargain. All of our coaches in our varsity sports are being represented, and I'm really proud of all of our coaches hosting camps. The only sport that's not is cross country, and we have a track camp, so our cross country coaches are helping with that. This year, we added a new brochure that is featuring all of the camps. The brochure is in all of our elementary schools, the middle school, high school, administration building, and at the Parks Department. And as we've done in the past, coaches run their own camps, and we have all the information online on mishawakaschools.com under Caveman Sports Camps. Now, branding is important, and giving kids affordable opportunities for a first-rate experience is our goal. And so you see our Caveman Sports Camps online. It's on Mishawaka Schools if you want to take a look at the screen, and it's really easy to go through. I want to thank Lynn Howard and Bruce Quick. They helped put this together online along with myself, and you can click on schedules and then go on, and it's real easy to negotiate. So we can't pay online yet because our coaches are all running the camps, and so people are still sending in checks, but that is something we're exploring and trying to do in the future. But it's real easy to go through, and you can click on that sport and get to football camp, and we have pictures of the coaches. And I think a nice touch that we did this year was we had all of our coaches in a maroon polo shirt with Mishawaka camps, and it's something we picked up from Notre Dame that they use in press conferences, and as people are being interviewed in the future, we got each of our coaches' shirts, and I think it's one of those nice clean looks, and it's also something that it just shows Mishawaka and it shows unity with all of our coaches. So again, I want to thank the people who helped us put this together, and piggybacking off of our sports camps, if I could have just a moment to talk about our phys ed teachers. All of our phys ed teachers from the 7 elementaries, middle school, and the high school got together on Monday for USTA training. And that training, they were able to get 30 new rackets and balls for the schools, and those were donated just because they came out to training. And I was amazed that all of our phys ed teachers from every school was represented there, so it was really cool. And also, the South Bend Tennis Association awarded Mishawaka a $500 grant to help the program and junior program, so kind of goes along with building those programs, but the USTA and our coaches, our phys ed, it was just neat to see that people all came together, and then our varsity coaches applied for that grant, so those monies will be able to be used for our future programs. So I guess we're talking about the green zone, but we're trying to get all these kids in the maroon zone in the future, and with our varsity coaches just helping out and getting these kids started. Mrs. Parks knows all about Future Cavemen and getting those kids invested early, and we're going to do that with our camps and some of our other sports. So I do have some more of these brochures, and again, they're in our elementary, middle, and high school and at the Parks Department, but if anybody would like to see some, I have some extras at the end. Okay?
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
It is my understanding, and I think it might need to be restated, that students that would have trouble or their families would have trouble coming up with these fees would be helped. So that
our coaches are all aware of that, and
exactly.
We call them scholarships, but basically we just give them a pass and they get to participate in the camp. So, and if any of our coaches would need any help with that, then the athletic department would chip in, but we haven't had any problem. And just to let you know, just for the insurance, we had talked about that last year, and the school corporation has helped out our coaches. If there's a teacher or a coach, somebody who's working in the building, they don't have to pay for that insurance anymore because they're using our facilities and we're using our people. So that's helped our coaches save a lot of money as well.
Great. Thank you.
It's wonderful.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
It's recommended that the Board of School Trustees approve the 2019 summer camps and fees as listed. Is there a motion to that effect?
Move for approval.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item 6.02, elementary language arts and literacy adoption. Ms. Hickel and Mrs. Stocksell.
Thank you, President Curry, Dr. Spiker, members of the board, audience members. We are excited to share with you tonight. It is more than just a textbook adoption. While we will talk about the materials, the story that we want to share is much more about the process, the involvement of our wonderful staff, and then our plans moving forward. I realize that looks like a completely blank slide. This is where you're going to get into that zone and you're going to close your eyes and you're going to imagine that on that slide What you're seeing represented is ISTEP ELA results for School City Mishawaka, as well as our comparative schools. We've brought to you many times the concept of starting with the why, what our impetus for this is, as well as using data to inform that. If you could see it, there is a green line that shows our trajectory. And then you can see in various shades 5 comparable schools that are represented on that slide. What you'll notice across the state, you saw a dip in 2015 with the change in ISTEP. So that downward decline that you're seeing on there in green was represented across the state, so that wasn't necessarily unexpected. But when you look further at the data, what you're seeing there is while many of our comparative schools were able to rebound from that dip, we continued to decline. Obviously, as we explored this data, this wasn't where we wanted to be, and we needed to dig further and look at what was causing that, and then that would be able to help us to plan moving forward. We started with a comprehensive needs assessment to be able to look at the data that was impacting those results. And ultimately, we really wanted to focus on the factors that we could control. So there are many factors impacting our ELA scores, but for our planning purposes, we had to focus on what we know that we could impact in the classroom through resources, training, support for our teachers, and the intentionality of the system that we were able to build. Oftentimes, when people were asked about the previous adoption, the focus was so much on the adoption of the materials and not on the instructional practices that were taking place in the use of those materials. So it's not single-handedly one particular material that's going to either make or break your scores or that's going to determine learning. We know that it's how those materials are used in the classroom. Ultimately, there's very little. With that adoption of journeys, there was very little curriculum and pacing guides provided to the staff as support. It also lacked training and professional learning that went along with that. So oftentimes the teachers felt ill-supported and didn't know the direction that they were supposed to take. We also discontinued during that time period grade level meetings, which is something that the teachers had been relying on, and they stopped having vertical alignment meetings. Another factor that certainly played into that decline in our results is the lack of using predictive metrics. We know that there weren't formative assessments in place. If you didn't have a curriculum map, you most likely didn't have common assessments that then were used to be able to remediate and change your instruction before something like iLearn or a summative assessment. Ultimately, overall, there was just a lack of alignment that was taking place. We weren't aligning ourselves internally, whether that's horizontally or vertically, but we also weren't aligning ourselves with Indiana state standards. As the standards changed, the lack of maps and the lack of that direction became even more profound. And ultimately, this turned out to be another example of a graphic we've shown you in other regards, which is this idea of random acts of improvement that weren't getting us the results we desired. So what we want to focus on tonight then, in addition to the materials, is the plan that was put in place that led us to where we're at today to be able to share these materials, as well as our plans moving forward. So you can see along the bottom is kind of the timeline for the implementation and all the different steps and process, and we'll focus on different aspects within that. But really, we want to focus on the people that made this possible through Katie's leadership in this project, as well as the involvement of our staff and stakeholders. We had offered the opportunity for all teachers to participate in this, and they even had a variety of ways that they could participate. And so we're going to highlight some of their roles here tonight. So I'm going to start. Oh, one other aspect. In the planning stages, Indiana Department of Education also had provided a lot more support since the past adoption, and they built out a literacy framework that looked beyond just the individual skills that are represented in the standards and looked at best practices And so the Indiana Department of Education came up with the idea of the literacy framework that had these non-negotiables that schools that wanted to be high achieving would build into their literacy block. So certainly those were guiding principles for us. So speaking of those great staff members, I'd like to introduce at this time one of our grade level leaders, Claire Fields, one of our exceptional kindergarten leaders, and she's going to talk a little bit about what that process looked like and her involvement as a teacher leader.
Thank you. Hello. I was very pleased when they offered the opportunity for every teacher within the district to come in and participate in this. I believe that when we're in there and we're using it, that we definitely have a stake in this. So it was opened up to all of us. There were quite a few that came to John Young Middle School for our initial meeting, and Katie and Sarah showed us all of the information from the Department of Education. We looked through, we discussed what the new literacy framework was going to look like through the state, and that then we would also be doing it within School City of Mishawaka. We talked about some great books that would support some of the ideas of where we were sort of headed, and then they said, okay, now get together and talk about what your literacy block looks like. What is it as a teacher that you know you need to get through for your kids and what's important to have done? So we all sort of broke off and we came up with, you know, different grade levels said different things. You, of course, had your whole group reading, you had your shared reading, shared writing, and, you know, we were tossing all these ideas out. And when you looked at everything at the end, it came into a balanced approach for literacy. And then we sort of hit the ground running, I think, with that. We were able to go ahead, I'm going to have to put those on. We went ahead and started looking at options that would supply all of the things that we had discussed that we needed. And again, got together and looked through all of these materials and discussed it, talked back and forth, and decided on the one we're looking at tonight, and that the balanced approach to literacy using the workshop models for both writing and for reading were the way that we all felt was going to best support our students. Thank you.
No, thank you, Claire. We appreciate your hard work and your leadership. So after our teachers led us to our desired state using the literacy framework from the IDOE, we went across the state and we vetted the core curriculum options that had been specifically released for different adoptions across the state for different districts. Using their criteria, we narrowed down to 6 presentations, and we brought those presentations to our teachers. And this was to specifically the literacy committee. They use what you can see right there. It's hard to see, I know. I was seeing if that would help a little bit more, but it did not. It is an evaluation rubric for a literacy core curriculum. It was developed by the Institute for Educational Sciences, which is a U.S. Department of Education organization, and it goes through the literacy components of balanced literacy, looking at foundational skills, and it provides criteria for teachers to give a rating of the different core materials. We know if you've ever been in a sales pitch that we don't want to be driven by the sales pitch, we want to be driven by the content and the criteria that the teacher set out. So from those 6 options, they narrowed the options down to 2 using that evaluation rubric. The 2 that they narrowed down to was HMH or Scholastic. I'm now going to ask Courtney Kozak, principal at Beeger Elementary, what happened now after we narrowed it down to 2 options, because we knew it was not just the literacy committee that was going to be teaching from these core curriculum resources, it's every teacher in the district.
Good evening. Before the 2 options were rotated to Beeger Elementary School, where the teachers were given the opportunity to preview both possible adoptions, I found that our building was in need of some professional learning prior to casting our final vote for the new curriculum adoption. It was determined that some staff members had been trained previously and truthfully had continued to teach a balanced literacy workshop model daily, while others had not received any of the training that many of us did years ago, including myself. To address this need, our instructional leadership team planned to use a PLC morning, beginning with a brief overview of what Reader's Workshop was, and specifically the mini lesson component. At the end of the training, we identified teachers that were comfortable and confident with this model and set up peer-to-peer observations. I'm happy to report that not only did one observation happen between two sets of teachers, or a set of teachers, but several over the course of a few weeks. This process exemplified the willingness of our teachers to become more educated about the many facets of our selection choices before casting their vote, while having a bonus of being able to share their craft and learn from one another. Not only did the teachers have this experience to refer to as they weighed their options, but also the professional learning module in Canvas. Finally, the process concluded with the district teachers having the opportunity to vote on the English language arts adoption of their choice. The final selection process allowed teachers the opportunity to have their voices heard. Going forward, it's my hope that our teachers will continue these professional learning visits for the additional components of the Reader's Workshop model prior to receiving our new adoption.
Thank you, Courtney. And so the teachers cast the votes, and I know it's difficult to see on the screen, but what you'll see is the overall vote with HMH being on the top was the overall selection from our teachers in the district, with Scholastic as a close second, as I predicted it should be using that evaluation rubric. While the options were rotated to different schools and teachers that chose to participate in the professional learning, we knew we had to start looking at prices and start looking at what resources we already have. We would not want to duplicate purchases or add to what we already have in our own schools. And so now leader intern Molly Bush for the Curriculum and Instruction Department is going to describe the process that she and a 5th grade teacher at Twin Branch, Shanda Harrell, started for us.
So in reflecting on the best possible process for seeing through this implementation and adoption, we prioritized effectiveness and specifically efficiency by making or trying to make smart purchases. One of our early steps toward that end was to conduct a literacy inventory of all the resources and materials that have been sitting in all of the elementary buildings for the past several years. We created a document that shows what materials and resources we found at each building, and that's been shared with several teachers so that we're able to see not only what resources we have and where, but what materials we would be able to use to support any professional learning that we would choose to implement throughout this process. In doing all of this, we discovered a few inconsistencies in the way we had been storing and tracking a lot of our materials through 2 different systems, being this and our library management system software, and we've made some plans to make sure that we're more efficient in that as we move forward through this process.
Thank you, Molly. And something that very special came out of their process of doing the inventory was finding professional learning books that we could use in implementation of the literacy workshop, the balanced literacy approach. From there, you have a cost comparison. So I mentioned earlier the first, one of the finalists that we were investigating was Scholastic. The average price per pupil, I know it's difficult to see, their initial price was well over $200 per pupil for a 6-year time period. Of course, we said that was not reasonable, and we had negotiated down to, if we would have gone with Scholastic, down to $195 per pupil for that 6-year period. That only reflects K through 6. What you have to keep in mind, if we went through Scholastic, 7 through 8 had already decided they were doing HMH into literature, so we would have 2 different core curriculums at the secondary level compared to the elementary level. The one in the middle, we wanted to look at our past practice, so the one in the middle is Journeys. This represents the per pupil ratio, and at that point, the per pupil ratio, our previous adoption was $169.79. And then the very last bar represents HMH. And this is for our K-6 and, as you know, for our K-8 price, and it comes down to $143.55 per kid for a 6-year period. For the board members, you have a more detailed graphic that will show you the breakdown. It's with the contract of the kindergarten through 8th, the number of students served, and the per pupil ratio for your reference. So using, I wanted to say triangulation of information, but it's much more than triangulation. Using the feedback from our teachers as it visited every elementary school, the evaluation by the literacy committee with the evaluation of the rubric, the price comparison, the inventory, and then really looking at our student data. The decision was made for us today to present for approval HMH into reading and into literature, grades K through 8. This comprehensive literacy solution is going to provide structure, but also empower teachers as it is a flexible approach in the workshop model. And one thing that it highlights is its strong connection to learning by design. It focuses on the growth mindset, the whole child. It exposes our students to authentic texts, engages them in meaningful instructional practices, and it measures students' growth and looks for our improvement. So we're monitoring how our students are performing and what we need to change as we move forward. And finally, it's the purposeful and thoughtful integration of technology. As I mentioned, it focuses on the growth mindset. So HMH is not just a curriculum designer, they're also a publishing company. And so they have partnered with Mindset Matters, and they have integrated purposefully social emotional learning into each unit, focusing on skills such as grit, resilience, curiosity, to really promote a learning mindset, that we want these students to be active learners and to be lifelong learners. They have also acquired Rigby books. Many of our teachers have used Rigby guided reading books, but now there's a new edition that is coming out. And these are guided reading books that our students use in small groups to work on specific skills that the students need, and to also foster that love of reading. Each classroom, so each teacher will get their own guided reading library. A lot of times what we saw in our inventory was the school had a guided reading library. Each teacher with this model will have their own guided reading library to provide that individualized support. Also on the right-hand side, you're going to see the student choice library. There's over 50 selections that each teacher is going to get that's authentic text from the publishing side of HMH that will not only engage the students, but is focused on the whole child, and they give specific lessons about learning within the classroom and beyond the classroom. And there are strong connections between science and social studies. I also wanted to give a quick example. If you've ever heard of the picture book, Clark the Shark, instead of students just taking home a workbook, what they're getting is a consumable. And what you'll see, since it's a publishing company with HMH, students aren't just taking home a workbook, they are taking home the actual authentic text. So if a teacher is up reading a picture book and focusing on a comprehension strategy, or also a strategy for Clark learning how to be a good friend, the students will actually leave with the picture book in their hands and start to build that classroom library. And these are titles that you recognize. They are not titles just created. These are our authentic trade literacy books. And then finally is monitoring and using technology with power and purpose. So there is a technology piece. So not only did you see the actual books they'll have in their hands, because that's important, but there's also all the books are accessible online. So each student will have access to that online, and more importantly, our teachers will have access to that online and be able to track their data in a meaningful way to assess student growth. And there's multiple assessments that are authentic and integrated throughout the curriculum, so we're able to see how our students are performing and to make judgments about what our future will look like, what changes do we need to make in real time instead of waiting to fail or waiting not to succeed. We're going to be able to make those changes in real time. And finally, I know we've said we've set out the work we've done, but really we want to emphasize the work has just started. We are sticking with our learning by design as our guiding framework. So now that we're presenting this, if it's approved, we will be curriculum mapping and doing pacing guides. With the maps, we'll incorporate the IDOE standards, and we will have predictive metrics using airways and growth metrics using HMH. So we'll look at our kids' proficiency, but also look at their growth, because we know we are growing our students. We also want to bring back our grade level communities of practice, so our first grade teachers are able to meet, talk about their practice, and make changes in real time for continuous improvement. An additional advantage is our instructional practices. With K through 8, there's many practices that are based on research and that are the leading practices right now that every teacher will be using, such as the notice and note for close reading. But it will be consistent kindergarten through 8th grade. So when a kid walks into a classroom in a kindergarten and the next year goes to 1st grade, he's not learning how to do literacy all over, that it's a predictable structure for that student. I'm not going to read that, obviously, but this is outlining our work of where we are going to next. As mentioned, we will start, if approved, with our curriculum maps and pacing guides. Follett Library Services, as part of being our supplier for our library books, will look at our curriculum map, and they're going to take our curriculum maps, look at our standards, and they're going to add in even more authentic trade books that we have in our own libraries and align it to our curriculum to us as a free service. Then we're going to focus on our professional learning in the summer. We're going to let teachers start to experience using some of the trade books and the guided reading books during summer school. And then we're going to really start the year with a professional learning focus. If we focus on everything, we're not going to do it well. And so our first year, we are going to focus on implementing a balanced literacy through the use of a workshop model and learning and using HMH core curriculum resources. At the end of our first year, we will reevaluate, get input from teachers, look at our data, and then we will make 2 additional goals for the next year and move towards that continuous improvement cycle. At this time, before we move for approval, we'd like to open the floor for any questions or comments.
Impressively thorough process that you used, and it sounds like a good product. Do you have, and I see you have the comparison of the average price per pupil, but do you have any figures on what the cost would be to the corporation?
Yes, if you should have sorry, we did give you a lot of paperwork. You should have.
A lot of paperwork here.
Yes.
The breakdown per grade level looks like this. But then the other one that Katie referenced.
That sheet? Yeah. That's the bid sheet.
This one really shows, comparing our last adoption, we're looking at over 1,000 students more for $30,000 less for a total cost. Those are your 2 price projections.
Also within HMH being, as I mentioned, a company but also a publisher, you can also see the free components that are offered to us, which are valued at over $400,000.
And this is over how many years? 6, is it?
6 years.
Thank you. Are there any other questions?
I have a couple of comments, and I'd like to have Mr. Alex to I'd like to have Alex to basically talk about the financial arrangement, because Alex and the whole leadership team is very sensitive to the textbook fund that we've been working with over the last number of years to keep it in the black. So, Alex, would you?
Yep, so the total cost of the adoption is $535,000. I know the board's aware of how proud I've been of how we've been able to build that textbook rental fund balance up over the past year and a half. But we didn't build it up just to look at it on paper. We bought it obviously for adoptions such as this. There's $371,000 in the textbook rental fund to date. We'll, of course, see additional revenue in June. I indicated to Katie that it would be ideal if we could pay this over 2 years. I don't know if initially there was an interest charge to do that, but when Katie was done with them, there wasn't. So we'll actually pay this in this year and next year. And I do believe that we can keep the fund in the black by financing it over those 2 years. And if you really dig through the contract with HMH, I don't think Katie and Sarah and their team took enough credit for the deal that we're really getting from HMH, because there is a great deal of savings in that number. So
This $535,000 is for a 6-year period?
the adoption is for a minimum of 6 years. I think my hope is that it can go even longer. But we will pay for the product over the next 2 years. We'll make 2 installations on the adoption. It's the and I believe I'm correct in saying it is the largest adoption, the most expensive adoption that the school will see over that period of time.
And we share that hope, Alex, that really with building out the framework and the workshop model being the focus, this is something that will last us. A great example of that is looking at the libraries that we've had in place that have supported our literacy with the guided reading. Many of them are over 20 years old and still being used. So this isn't something that we anticipate coming back in another 6 years asking for something of that magnitude. And I know that all of you are well aware of Katie's skill set, but what you may not know is she is the master negotiator. I would take her to the car dealership with me any day.
My comments are related to the process. There are a lot of people that deserve a lot of credit because this is one of those big rocks that we have in the school system that can either tilt our funding one way or the other. And so I give a lot of credit to Alex and the business office for their involvement with curriculum and instruction through this whole process and their communication. I give a lot of credit to Bill Welling. One of the geniuses of Bill is that he knows when to get out of the way and let good people do their work. And this was a case where Bill brought the team together, the team decided on a strategy, and he let them go do their work. And that's the sign of a great leader. So to Bill, thank you for doing that. It's also a great example in the school city of Mishawaka of how teams work. You saw presentations by senior leaders, by Sarah, by Katie. Corey wasn't up there, but I know that Corey had a lot of involvement in this process. You saw a building leader in Courtney Kozak, and you saw teacher leaders in Claire and in Molly. And that's really how we get things done in the school city of Mishawaka. You have to have all of the people who are impacted by the decisions at the table and leading that charge. I couldn't be more proud of how the teacher leadership model that has been developed over the past year is working. Teacher leaders are making a huge difference in making decisions about how instruction is going to be organized, how instruction is going to be delivered, and how students are going to be impacted. The other piece that I think is so significant in this presentation is that this is all tied back to learning by design. And learning by design is our strategy, long-term strategy of breaking the curve of declining student learning in the school city of Mishawaka. And that is, in my humble opinion, may well be one of the most significant contributions that I've been a part of as a team member in terms of turning the table in a different direction. Because we only have 2 important things we do. One is student learning, and the other is keeping our kids safe. Those are the two most important things that we do as a governing board, you do, and that we do as school leaders. So my commendations to all of you who were involved in this process, a job exceedingly well done, and I can tell you this was not an easy task. This is a huge, huge effort to get to this point, and I can only hope that the results in the next 6 years will continue to be reinforced, that your decisions were great decisions. Our students will benefit, and thank you so much to all of you for your leadership and your efforts.
We thank you for your patience in letting us celebrate the work that went into this. At this time, it is recommended that the Board of School Trustees approve the adoption of HMH as a core curriculum resource as presented.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to approve? If not, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you for the good work.
Thank you.
Under Business and Operations, item 7.01, acceptance of donations. Dr. Spiker.
$500 from Tech Point Foundation to Twin Branch Elementary School for STEM bins. $50 from B&H Photo Gift Certificate from Mrs. Dina Squadroni to the MHS broadcasting class for future equipment purchases. Recommend that these generous donations be listed as presented.
Move for approval.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Accept the donations. Any discussion on the motion? If not, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Item 7.02, report on the Akita Box Preventive Maintenance Software Program implementation. Mr. Faulkner.
Mr. President, Dr. Spiker, members of the board, administrators, staff, and guests, I don't know how I follow what I just seen, so hopefully I'll try not to bore you too much with an update on our maintenance software program, the Akita Box. If you recall, I was in front of the board asking for your approval back at the August 2017 school board meeting to enter into, to purchase the Akita Box software program. We spent a significant amount of time, several months prior to coming in front of you, researching a number of different types of maintenance work order programs. The Akita Box was something different, something special. I thought it meshed really well with our needs for the school corporation. When you have over 1 million square foot of buildings, hundreds of acres of grounds, you need a tool like this. No matter how good you are or how good you think you are, you're going to miss something. So thank you in advance again for your approval of that, and Dr. Spiker and Mr. Newman for your support for the Akita Box. As a reminder, we did have a work order system in place prior to the Akita Box for staff. It worked well. It was actually implemented by our information technology department, an in-house work order system, and it was a great communication piece from staff to operations to tell us what they needed fixed or repaired or serviced. But it didn't really meet our goals and objectives as a operations, to successfully manage our overall and take care of the well-being of our school corporation. We wanted to enhance our productivity. Our goals was to track our capital assets, forecast expenditures, and implement automated preventive maintenance work orders to protect our assets and to reduce our expenditures. The Akita Box is still, it's really simple and user-friendly for the school city staff, much like our old system was. You simply go on to our website, go to the operations tab and fill out the work order form and indicate what your issue is, and it's that simple. Once that form is submitted, Operation Department analyzes it and sends it to the appropriate custodian or maintenance technician. The old system would only allow maintenance technicians to receive a work order. Custodians are now involved. They can do more than just the cleaning of a facility. Some of them are very, very talented. So once we send it to a custodian or a maintenance technician, it's in their inbox or their to-do list, if you will, until that work order is complete. And in order for them to complete a work order, they have to fill out their closure form on how long it took to do that task, what the expense was with that task, and it gives them an opportunity to make some notes or add pictures if they ever have to go back to that work order for in the future for reference. One of the things that I really like about it is every morning when I come into work, I get an email from Akita Box that says, you have 8 work orders that are overdue. Sometimes that's due to me being underestimating the time frame it takes to get a job done. Sometimes it's because they're waiting on a part. Sometimes it's because they've got 25 work orders in their back pocket that they're doing. So I really like that function with Akita Box because it gives us the opportunity to really manage and find out why it's not getting accomplished. So I like that function real well. My favorite function and tool of the Akita Box is the automated preventive maintenance work order. This function, this tool, in my opinion, will pay for itself 100 times over in the end because it generates automated work orders for routine tasks. It takes the guessing work. I mean, like I said before, you have over 1 million square feet of buildings, and it takes the remembering out of the equation and really puts the preventive to its fullest. So, for example, if you're replacing filters every quarter, it's automatically going to an email is automatically going to those daytime custodians to change the filters, or to inspect their rooftops, or inspect their playgrounds. So, and little things. It reminded me that we needed to order chairs for commencement. So, there's so much involved with it that it just takes. It helps a guy like me that doesn't remember things so much. So from that aspect, it's great. So that's my favorite tool. Other tools that it has location-based mapping. So basically, it allows our maintenance technicians, they're all issued a school city iPad. So when they're in a building, they can go to that iPad, and they can pull up any function of where the electrical outlets may be, or where the control boxes are at, or where any utility function at all, from fire safety to, it's all filtered. You can look at them all at one time, or you can minimize it by just an electrical function or a plumbing or something of that nature. On the job site references, there's a lot of times in the past where the maintenance technicians would have to come back to the office and pull out the blueprints and to solve an issue. They can look on their iPad right now, pull up the Akita Box, and be able to use that tool right there on the job site. And I don't know if you can read that up there. It says the average wrench time is 33% wasted on job site because they don't have the tools necessary. Well, this gives our guys the opportunity to reference things out on the job site and be able to get the information that they need. Integrated space management, again, another useful tool. It has details on every room of every school building in the corporation, and I'm able to pull up This tool is really good for construction, any remodels that you're going to do. So for example, if we're going to recarpet an entire school, I can simply go to a function that'll bring up the square footage of every single classroom in that school and upload it and get it to a vendor to get a quick quote on that job. Building to building asset, another really good tool. Again, this all works for filters, so whatever you're looking for, whether it be how many drinking fountains you have in a school, or where are all the AEDs located in the school, or fire extinguisher, fire pull stations, whatever you're looking for, it's a click away, and you can filter that. You can have as many things on that map as you want, or you can simply just put up what you're looking for, and it's a click away. It also has QR codes, so if our guys are working on a mechanical boiler or something, they can scan that QR code, and it automatically bring up a manual for that piece of equipment to show them how it needs to be serviced. It's just another reference point for them. So very time saving, very neat tool. As well as the daily emails, I also get monthly reports from the Akita Box and annual reports that talk about the number of work orders that we accomplished for that month or for that year. Who it was assigned to, how many were completed, how many are still open, how many are overdue, and the number of work orders completed by the individuals. And that is another really cool thing in-house, because at any given time you hear maintenance technicians talking about, well, I did 25 work orders the other day, how many did you get done? So it's a real healthy competition amongst the staff. You maybe only got 4 or 5, and I got 30 done, whatever. But nonetheless, I'm very, at the time when we unveiled the Akita Box, we were really bombarded with a lot of projects going on. We are really starting to dive into it more and more. We have continued professional development with them on the latest functions, latest tools that they're bringing out. They work closely to try to make it your own. We've given several recommendations, and they've changed it. A national change for School City of Mishawaka. One of the things that I wanted to see is, rather than being able to assign it to one person, some tasks take more than one person to do it. So let's give them all credit. So now we're going to be able to assign it to multiple folks. So with that, I am very excited, and again, thank the board for approving this back when you did. It's been a work in progress, and I see it only getting better to help protect our assets in the school corporation. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them for you.
Well, thank you. Thanks for reporting this update. Sounds like a wonderful tool.
It really is. Thank you.
Thank you.
Really, everything seems to be right on target. March was a 3-pay month, so in 3-pay months, our cash balance does dip down. That's where it's always been very helpful to take the fund balance and compare it to 12 months before. That's been made a little bit difficulty with House Enrolled Act 1009. Now with our education fund, we no longer have the general fund. So I created an additional report that I'll get to at the end that's going to help with some comparisons. But $3.4 million in the education fund at the end of March. And again, our revenue and our expenditures are pretty much right on target with where we would expect them to be. Referendum operating fund. Again, there's been no revenue, really, substantial revenue, other than student fees collected for broken or lost devices. I did not take out any tax anticipation warrants this year. So there is a true $212,000 sitting in the referendum operating fund. Additional revenue will obviously come in both June and December. But again, the salaries and benefits that are being paid out of that fund are hovering right there around 26%, pretty much right where we would expect them, 24 to 26% by the end of March. I'm going to skip the 3 debt service funds and go right to the operations fund. Again, $1.1 million in that fund at the end of the month. Again, up at the top, you can see we're still making that monthly transfer of $666,000 from the education fund. Salaries and benefits right there around 26%, generally right where we would expect to see them in March. So most things right on target there in that fund as well. Our school lunch fund, hey, we've made it through a 3-pay month, and we've actually still been building on our cash balance when we compare that to January. So the school lunch fund continues to be self-sustaining, and we're almost to the point where we have to get with Peggy on how we're going to spend some of this money, because the maximum amount of money we're supposed to carry in this fund for any extended period of time is about $750,000. But again, her and her staff have done a great job, and that fund looks very good. The textbook rental fund, again, as I mentioned earlier, $371,000 in that fund. We did get the state reimbursement for the 2019-2020 school year back in February. I believe I pointed that out. That was about $269,000. And our next big chunk of revenue will come from the debt service transfer at the end of June. And of course, these monies will be used to help us purchase the new English language adoption. The last fund here is the self-insurance fund. Whereas a 3-pay month kind of looks bad in your education and your operations fund, a 3-pay month looks terrific in your self-insurance fund. That's because we run payroll 3 times in those months, and so the premiums for your health insurance, your dental, your vision, that all gets paid into the self-insurance fund in that same month. So you essentially have 3 installments of revenue as opposed to 2. So we're back in the black in the self-insurance fund, at least for now. I still project and anticipate that we will need to transfer some money towards the end of the year, as again, our premium's not quite enough to match the expenditures. But overall, our claims for self-insurance for now, I believe 5 months in a row, have been trending very positively compared to last year. So I think that plan is starting to mature, and we're starting to see the savings in terms of the medical and prescription claims that we were hoping to see. So it's good news in that fund as well. I did create a new report, Eric, if you can click over to that one. It is, what did I call it? I think I called it the historical comparison. What I did is I took the general fund, transportation, capital projects, bus replacement, and historical society funds, and I combined them, and I went all the way back to 2014. And I put those on this sheet by month, and I highlighted March because that's the month that we're looking at. I did include a row for tax anticipation warrants, and then a row over to the right that's our cash balance, but what is our actual net balance, because those tax anticipation warrants simply get paid back at the end of the year. They're just a cash flow instrument. So the important column is the net balance. So if we look at March, where the combination of our education and our operations fund is sitting at $4.5 million. We were sitting just under $3.5 million last year, so we're continuing to trend in a positive direction. We're building our balances up, at least for now. Again, we know of our issues in 2020 and moving forward, but we're still in a positive trend, and things look good for 2019. So again, happy to answer any questions that the board may have, but those are the financials for the month of March 2019.
Alex, this is good work on this sheet, this comparison.
Yeah, this is very instructive. And shows very much shows a positive trend here over the last few years. Any questions or comments for Alex? Thank you, Alex, and we'll move on to public announcements, the final part of the agenda, item 11.01. The public is advised that on May 7, 2019, there will be no school for students and teachers. However, the Administrative Center, John Young Middle School, and Mishawaka High School offices will be open during regular hours. The next meeting of the Board of School Trustees will be held on May 8, 2019, beginning at 7 o'clock p.m. at Mishawaka High School. That's a change from our usual pattern of holding the first meeting of the month in the Administrative Center. And the high school, of course, is at 1202 Lincoln Way East, Mishawaka, Indiana. Is there anything else to come before the board? If not, we are adjourned.